If you are a family who is going through a separation or divorce and you have children with special needs, you are going to want to listen to this because I have an expert guest who not only has her own personal experience in supporting her children, but also has a ton of experience in helping families navigate the divorce process with children with different needs. So I want to introduce you to my guest, Mary Anne Hughes. She's a certified special needs divorce coach, pre-mediation divorce coach, a mediator, a parenting coordinator, and a co-parenting specialist. So Mary Anne has tons of experience and expertise to share with us. So Mary Anne, welcome.
Thank you so much, Barney. It's a pleasure to be here and speaking with you and sharing information that we're to help people in this situation.
It absolutely will. And just full disclosure, Mary Anne and I have worked together on several different things. She's been a guest on my podcast. She has been a presenter on my Real Divorce Talks and my summits. And Mary Anne is also an accomplished author and TEDx talk speaker. So we want to make sure we talk about those things as well. But let's dive right into a bit of your backstory because I think it really helps people understand why you are such a trusted expert in this area.
Yeah, thanks. So I'm the mom of two now young adults on opposite ends of the autism spectrum. And after 20 years of marriage and my kids being in their teens, I faced an unexpected divorce. And I had to figure out, how do I navigate that? How do I make sure that my children's needs would be addressed as part of the divorce and afterwards, and advocate for them as I had since they were little, but making sure that they'd be okay post-divorce.
Because there are a lot of different issues that parents have to think about. And compared to parents who are divorcing with children who may not have the need for additional financial or educational services or medical services or whatever may be the case, that may go on, traditionally or typically child spousal support and child support. Why did I say spousal support? Child support is going to end when the child turns 18, but that's not always the case when you're dealing with children with different needs. Can you talk a little bit about that, Mary Anne?
Sure, and that was a frustration for me during my divorce process. I knew this had to look different. It wasn't a typical divorce, but it was hard to find people and resources that could support me in that effort. And so I ended up taking a long time getting through the process and learning what I need to do and finding the right experts, and eventually did get a great result for my family. But I didn't want other families to have to go through all that effort. That's why I decided to become special needs divorce coach, all the things that you described to help other people navigate their journeys. But yeah, so like you said, are the needs of a child with some sort of disability or complex needs, they're not going to end at age 18 when the typical divorce agreements and parenting plans and child support ends. And I had to figure out, okay, what's going to be the lifelong needs, or at least long-term needs of my children, and how can we address that as part of the divorce? Granted, each state handles that differently, but you can always come to an agreement as to how you're going to take care of that child, hopefully do it together, both financially as well as other ways, so that you're both hopefully involved in the child's life. But what's that going to look like to help the child and to make the process as amicable as it can be? Granted, there's all kinds of divorces out there and situations, but we want to really focus on the child and what they need to succeed, given that they may not be able to work in the future. They may not be able to go to school, or if they are able to go to school or work, and maybe with some supports. And how can we then continue to support them as their parents in that effort?
Yeah, and so this is really important because no matter what age or stage of development your child may be at, there are always going to be unknown factors that can come up as well. And maybe not so much for children who are on the spectrum or children who have a cognitive impairment, but if you're looking at children with a medical particularly a medical issue where suddenly medical costs can get very extreme if the condition progresses to the point where maybe the children need continual care or these kind of things. How can families look at building in something like that through the mediation process? And do most mediators have the kind of training to be able to even recognize that that may be something the parents might need to speak about?
Right, that's a great point. A lot of professionals don't really understand, don't have the the background or the exposure to special needs families and complex needs, medical needs, in terms of what's really needed, what should be discussed as part of that. And that's why it's so important for them before they go into these sessions where they're going to make decisions that are going to impact them for a long time, is getting information to share either with their attorneys, with mediators, with other parties who are going to help them make decisions and help plan the course of what's going to happen in the future. That includes financial people, that includes not just family law, but also estate planning attorneys that can help create documents and structures for the child to be protected, because that's an important part as well. Is there's all these needs that we can talk about more, how to address those, but also we want to protect them financially. And so you've got to set things up, at least in the US and different places it's going to be different. How do we have money funneled to that child that protects them and still allows them to receive support and supports and benefits from the government? For instance, in the U.S., we have certain cutoffs. You can only have $2,000 in the child's name. And so what do you do with that other support that they need that may be coming to them, to make sure that they're protected and getting everything that they can and not inadvertently being disqualified for some benefits?
Yeah, and that was really eye-opening for me because I've attended several training workshops that you do through the National Association of Divorce Professionals. And one of the things that I did not know was that if, say, a family member passes away and leaves a child with special needs an inheritance amount. And if it's over that limit, that may knock that child out from being able to apply for any kind of government grants or support or programs. And so even if it's only $1 over, it could really dramatically impact that child's ability or the family's ability to apply for those kind of things for the child.
Exactly, as well as child support. That maybe need to be done a certain way and paid a certain way. So we have to come understand that as we're creating these agreements and drafting our documents so that we don't create problems for ourselves and for our children in the future.
Yeah, and again, that's something, I don't think that most people are aware. I don't think most people are aware that, and when I say most people, most parents may be aware if they've got kids that they're applying for these things for, but they may not understand the implications of some of the divorce settlement things, that how that may directly impact that.
Exactly, because whether you're going through divorce or not, planning for your child is a big endeavor, and so it's important to understand what the options are and what they might look like to protect your child, no matter your situation, for sure.
Right, right. Are there any other common things that you see get missed on in agreements, whether they're negotiated, whether they're just, a do-it-yourself divorce, fill in the form blank template thing, or whether it's a mediated settlement, or whether it's litigation? Are there gaps that you see that quite often are in those kind of documents?
Right, like you mentioned. So, depending on the child's needs, we have to get a clear picture of that. What is it now, and what might it be in the future? And so, the more you can try to put pen to paper or computer, whatever the situation might be for you, is track the costs that you're currently experiencing, what might be happening. So, say you're getting government benefits, or even whether you're not, if it's all out of pocket or not covered by insurance, we have to be able to understand what the picture is now to be able to say, okay, this is how much child support is needed. This is how much contribution. How are we going to split the expenses? What are we going to share? And how long is this going to continue?
Right.
So in some states, child support may end at 18, but in some states, you can have it be up to a certain age, or sometimes what they call indefinite or lifelong child support. So you have to think about how to make sure that that's being considered. I had a question today with somebody, and their petition for divorce didn't include anything about the child having a disability. Well, it's really important to get that noted up front so that you don't have problems later on if you were to go back and modify, say, for lifelong or adult child support, that disability is already there, so it doesn't become an issue and say, well, you didn't mention it earlier. And then some people, don't know what the future holds, especially if your child is young. We don't,
Mhm.
we want to hope for the best that they will be more independent, but we don't know. So we have to hope for the best, but also plan for the worst. And that's in a divorce situation. You want to kind of take that perspective to say, okay, say this is our situation. What is our future going to look like, and what can we do to support that child? And we want to do it in as positive way, as I said, as we can. And part of that is the parenting plan, the schedule, and how that works. Because what may be a typical agreement or visitation or possession for, say, a typical child may not work for one with complex needs.
Right.
Children with autism, for instance, they like predictability and structure, and they may not do well being away from one parent for a long period of time, say for a whole summer. That may not be practical. So we have to tailor it to that particular family situation, what can work for the child, and also what's going to work with the parent schedule as well.
Right. And do you find, and this may be an unfair question, but do you find that sometimes in these mediations or negotiations that one parent is maybe not as focused on the child as the financial picture, and it becomes really challenging to get them to agree to contribute, say, to a living trust or some kind of funding for that child, like you said, because you cannot predict what the future is going to bring. So I can hear, some of the client spouses that I work with saying, nope, I'm not putting that money aside. They're not going to be able to go to college, so I'm not setting up a college fund. I don't believe given their condition, they're going to be able to drive. I don't, and basically once they're 18, they can go live in a group home or whatever. Like, just really callous towards the kids. How do you advise your clients to handle that? Because that's got to be so difficult as a parent to deal with that kind of situation.
Right, that's a great question because sometimes it goes back even a step before that, that some parents maybe don't can't aren't fully accepting of the disability or deny that it even exists. And if
Right.
that's the case, then you've got to have your medical reports and experts and so on to show objectively, what is a child's disability and what does that mean? So you can get experts like psychologists or behavior people or medical professionals to show what the actual needs are in the situation to present that, say, to the mediator or to the different parties involved in a divorce and making and drafting agreements to show these are the actual needs. This is why we're asking for what we're asking. And so part of that then is getting a financial person on board. There's
Mm.
special needs financial planners who can help put dollar amounts or whatever currency you're using to those needs, right? So this is a situation with our child. This is what their needs are, and this is how much it's going to cost to create these opportunities or take care of that child, whether it's now or in the long term. Because that's what was the biggest sticking point for me is I don't want to, not worry. You have to worry in the future about what my child's needs are and how I'm going to pay for those, having been a stay-at-home mom for a long time, taking care of my kids. And so, yeah, depending on the dynamics, if someone is the primary caregiver versus the primary earner, you have a lot of those tensions, like you mentioned. And so it's a matter of getting both people to agree to come together and say, okay, this is what the child needs.
Right.
This is why they need what they need and what it's gonna cost and how can we together address that, whether it's hopefully together for the financial as well as the caregiving needs. I see sometimes a lot of times where one parent maybe hasn't been as involved, isn't familiar with what to do, or the other parent is concerned that the other person can take care of them in their own time. And the reality is that child's going to spend time, hopefully, with both parents. And so we want both parents to be comfortable with what the child needs, their issues that they have, how to address, certain behaviors or medical needs or whatever it might be. So that's the goal, is to get both people on board as to what really is going on with that child and how they can both help them day to day as well as planning for their future and taking care of those needs financially.
Yeah, and I'm really glad you said this, Mary Anne, because here is the thing I hear all the time, particularly from women, moms, is I shouldn't have to defend this. I shouldn't have to explain this. And it's like, if the person you're negotiating against is talking in numbers, you have to talk in numbers back to them. You can't come at them with the emotional stuff because they're just like, well, that's just emotional stuff. So having those numbers, getting those professionals, making those long-term projections as to what these medical costs are going to be, it is so critical. If you already know that you're going to have troubles at a mediation or a negotiation, or even, convincing your through the litigation that this is required, getting those numbers is absolutely essential. And you mentioned a professional that I would just like to highlight. You mentioned that there's a special needs divorce or financial planner. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Right, right. There's a designation called Charter Special Needs Consultant, and these are financial planners that have experience, that have training, and understand what it takes to understand all the government benefits and the child's needs in the short and long term, and putting numbers to that. So that becomes critical. It can be done jointly with both parents working together, or it can be somebody that one side hires to show what the needs are and have reports, and they can be testifying experts as well. And so, yeah, because these numbers can be daunting, and I agree, like with what you said, you have to have in black and white what the numbers are. But I will add another layer to that. So it's not just the financial side, but sometimes people may not understand the day-to-day
Sure.
stresses and all the responsibilities of taking care of that child. And that's where something called a day in the life description or video can be very helpful to share with those supporting you, and share with the mediator or lawyer or judge, whoever it may be, to say, okay, this is why I'm asking for what I'm asking. It's not just because I'm asking for numbers for the sake of money, but this is what my day looks like. My
Right.
day from morning to night, and sometimes during the night, if the child gets up a lot, this is what I'm focused on. And this is why I need these supports. The financial support can also be for additional caregivers, right? Because if both parents are at home, maybe tag teaming, or at least someone being there while one person goes out to run errands or go shopping or have some time for self-care, that's not going to exist if it's a one
Mhm.
parent household. And so how
Right.
do we then provide relief to that parent when that child isn't is with them during that time? So
Yeah.
that is very important too, because there's a high rate of burnout and depression and just overwhelm with these parents, that we have to have some kind of safety net, whether it's additional caregivers coming in, or finding sitters, or finding respite opportunities, what it's called, to find either short term for a few hours, or sometimes even up to a weekend or longer, say summer
Right.
camps, to get a bit of a break and get that parent um, kind of back in the right frame of mind, or be able to do the best that they can do to take care of that child and for themselves.
Yeah, and I'm glad you mentioned the camp thing, because I actually have a client right now who's going through this, and she wants to be able to send her child to a special camp, which has amazing opportunities for the kids. It has the equine therapy where the kids get to ride the horses. Now, this is a child with a physical disability, but this child is going to need ongoing care, and the camp that she wants to send the child to is in a different state. And I think the camp itself is $5,000 a week because of the level of supervision and medical experts and everything that's on hand. And there's a whole bunch of costs involved. But and that's, I think, the flight and everything. But so the child is, I think, 7. So if she's going to do this for the next 11 years, that's a chunk of money, right? So that needs to be set aside in some way. It needs to be planned for between the parents, hopefully.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
Those are the, and yes, I mentioned the camp being benefit to the parent, but it's also great benefit to the child. They learn
Right,
independence
right.
skills. They learn all these other activities and have therapies that are very valuable to them as well. And so, yeah, you've got to look at not just camps, but the day to day. Are you going to be in a public school, in a private school? What does the funding look like for that? Sometimes that's can be considered part of child support. Sometimes it may be in a different bucket that you agree to how that's going to be handled.
Right.
Maybe sometimes a parent who's maybe the greater earner might pay a larger percentage. So it all depends on the situation, and on the child's needs and what that looks like. But yeah, I see financial considerations being playing a big part,
Right.
especially when you have these ongoing needs. And so you, like you said, you have to show why it is that we're asking for what we're asking. And part of that is not just financial, once again, but also the decision making. That becomes an important thing to talk about. Sometimes, if one person has been the primary active person in the child's education and medical visits, then it makes sense perhaps for that parent to continue that. So, we run into cases where people ask for 50-50 across the board, but when
Yeah.
it's decision making becomes a problem, then you have to go to a tiebreaker, to a doctor, to a professional, or end up in mediation or litigation again. I see those cycles going
Yeah.
on and on all the time. And so we want to try to avoid that. And so maybe it makes sense for one person to have the primary decision making while consulting the other parent, but having to hopefully avoid those other things that may may happen if you're not the designated person to make that final decision.
Right, right. Now, this all ties in to your TEDx talk that you gave. So let's talk about your TEDx talk, Marianne. And it just recently, congratulations for that. That was very exciting for you, and I loved it. I watched it a couple of times once it came out. So really appreciate that you got up and did that. Tell people who are interested, and everybody will be who's dealing with this, a little bit about what that talk and why you decided to do it.
Sure, I was inspired to apply for it as something different than I've never done anything like any kind of huge public speaking. Granted, I give webinars and speak to all kinds of training opportunities, but never live and a memorized speech. So that was a whole process itself to apply, to be selected, to go through different rounds. And I was selected because my story is unique, and special needs divorce hasn't really had a lot of light shown upon it. And so I want to raise awareness about this, but also I wanted to create it in a way that would appeal to more people. So it was more about advocacy. How do we advocate for those we love in challenging times? And how that helps us to grow and find our strength and purpose. And so
Right.
that's what happened to me is through my divorce and through advocating for my kids, I found my new purpose. I found this whole new line of work, and that's I'm committed to that now. But I'd also share a framework in there about how to overcome those challenges, how to rise. RISE is the acronym that I use. So it can help people whether they have special needs or not, and whether they're going through divorce or not. And so, yeah, I'm proud of having done that, having going through that experience. I will say, right before I had to give it live, I had to take care of my kids. It was, holiday winter break, and so didn't get as much practice and polish as I would have liked to on there. But I got my message across and was able to share, what was in my heart and ways to help people and things to think about as they're going through this. And so, yeah, part of the Rise thing, I also shared in the book that we you mentioned that you got there on your shelf, where I
Yes.
contributed a chapter describing the special needs divorce aspect and things to think about as you're going through. And I also collaborated with a divorce book author to create tailor one of her books to help kids with autism, and it's called My Parents Divorced Through My Eyes, Helping Children with Autism Understand Divorce. So we took her book and made it more say user friendly, I guess, in terms of the formatting, the way the words and the graphics are presented, and added some additional pages for those with sensory needs and autism. It could be for any kind of special needs and any kind of neurodiversity, really, but really to help the kids understand and support them and validate their feelings, but also has a parent's guide so they can help
Yeah.
have conversations with their kids, whether or not they're verbal. We're very deliberate about that the child doesn't have to be verbal. So we use that the language part, in a different way, because this can be whether they're able to talk or not, to be able
Right.
to have something to relate to and make it a positive experience where they do have to spend time with both parents. So yeah, I'm there just to share information to support people, whether it's individual sessions, group sessions, through books, through all kinds of things I do on social media and different events, working with people like you. So that's honored to be able to do that and
Well,
share my heart and my experience, support people along the way.
and thank you for doing this because you're right. I don't think enough of a light has been directed to this because it is impacting families. I mean, the whole idea of this of neurodivergence and kids on the spectrum, adults on the spectrum. Divorce can be challenging for them, and they're trying to navigate it themselves. So I just really appreciate everything that you've done, and I'm going to make sure links to the TEDx talk and the books are all in the show notes so people can find those easily. Mary Anne, I just really want to thank you for coming on here and talking about this. And I'm going to encourage you, if you are listening and you are a parent navigating separation or divorce with children who have a different set of needs, maybe than a neurotypical child might have, or a child without a medical problem, please reach out and talk to Mary Anne because it's one of the people that should be on a divorce team. You are one of the people that should be on a divorce team if you are dealing with this added concern as you're going through the divorce. So, Mary Anne, thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you. My pleasure. Thanks so much for having me.
And thank you everybody for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and tune in to the next Spotlight on the Divorce Expert.